Welcome back to the Fenway Focus. This is episode. I don't even know what episode we're on because we've done. It's been a while. I think it's episode 26 if my memory serves me correctly. Don't count me on that though. But I think this is episode 26. As always, my name is Derek. I'm here with Jason, and we have a very special guest. One of my Pesky Report co-hosts is here with me, and Jason. Jordan, would you like to introduce yourself? Shout out maybe a couple of your social media, whatever. Yeah, floor is
Hey,
yours.
yeah. Hey, y'all. I'm Jordan. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, my Twitter's at Jordan Leandre 55, and then I guess I'll also shout out Pesky Report, which Derek works for as well at Pesky Report. So, yeah, excited to get started.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a slate. Not a long series to talk about, obviously, with the third game of the Red Sox Blue Jays series being suspended. So we'll talk about that series a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive into some more trade deadline talk as Jordan, first time having him on the show. We'll get some of his ideas on the deadline, but also, too, Jason and I have been talking about it as well the last couple weeks a little bit. So we'll kind of dive a little bit more into it as well this week with that. First things first, though, we do want to start with this Blue Jays series. Red Sox split the two games that were played. They won the first game 7-6. They lost the second game 9-4 due to mostly a blow-up third inning, where the Red Sox gave up 7 runs. I'll hand it over to you, Jason, to get you in this. Where do you have any takeaways from this series, or is it just kind of a game they won? They put up 7, and then a game they lost, where it's just kind of the bad inning that ate them alive.
Well, first and foremost, I think the third game should have been a tie. There's no reason for them to resume the game in August. Just saying.
I'm with you on that.
Thank you. But the first game, obviously, you came back. You were down for a lot of it due to a 5-run seventh inning. My God, by the Blue Jays. Then Sox answered with 4 in the eighth. It was a lot. It was a hectic end of the game. But yeah, the Bello start concerning a little bit. I'm not like, oh, Bello needs to be sent to AAA again. No, I mean, look, two and a third innings. I mean, it's not good. 5 hits, 7 runs, all earned, 3 walks, only 2 strikeouts. Season ERA over 5.5. That is not good for a guy who you gave money to. It's tough because clearly the Sox gave him the money because they believed in him. I don't want to hear Sox fans say, oh, it was not worth it. He's getting paid nothing right now. He's going to be paid almost nothing next year. The real money is not coming till later on. It was to secure the future and the future maybe couple years and get him for a lower value than he is projected to be. Something I didn't explain that well, but point is, if you're worried about the contract, don't. But in terms of Bello's performance this season, yeah, you got to figure some things out with him. His start next week got pushed. Is it Thursday now? I know it's Wednesday, but did the rain? No, I think it's Wednesday.
I would assume they're just going to keep it as Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd assume they keep it as Wednesday.
Because Carter Crawford still pitched.
He still pitched, but anyways, they're going to clearly work on some things. He's had, ever since his White Sox start, he hasn't been really good. He hasn't really been good. He's been very shaky, commands off, leaving a lot of pitches in the zone, and he's been getting shelled. And the Sox lost that game. So, just saying, I'm getting a little frustrated with Bello, but hey, it's not too late.
Yeah, I'd say, too, it's like, I say this on the Pesky Report minor league show all the time, player development's not linear. This is kind of one of those moments. You're going to hit bumps in the road, especially with the guys who are young. Bello's still young. People got to remember that. So it just got, to me, it's just kind of the ebbs and flows of player development. Does it suck to see? Yes. But I think you can also kind of target it. Okay, the runner's on base and kind of the long innings are what's getting to him. It's not like he's going up and, just giving up a couple homers here, there, 1, 2, 3, couple, and before you know it, snap of a finger, they put 5 up because a single, a homer, maybe another hit, and another home run. It's this kind of built-out, long, dragging along innings where they get guys on base, and it's just like long and long at bats, and I think that's kind of a thing where it's like it's that seems more like a okay, this is like a just the ebbs and flows of player development than like, oh, he's just getting totally shelled, because he's not really getting like shelled. Like, I mean, is getting shelled, but not in a way of like just non-competitive. Like, there were times in that third inning, early in the inning, where he's struggling, but you're like, maybe get a double play here, maybe only gives up one, maybe two, right? There are a couple moments in that inning where you look at it and go, something maybe goes a different way, and then back goes a different way, and you're looking at a not bad inning, right? So, like I said, it's kind of ebbs and flows of player development. Sucks to see, but it happens. And Bayo's not the first person it's happened to. It's happened to many other people.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure. It's happened to Cutter Crawford.
yeah,
It's happened to Tanner Houck. It's happened to all these guys. Does it suck to see? Yeah, but the thing is too, it's just, and I'll hand it over to Jordan because he's our guest, and I want to hear his intake too. I love you, Jordan. It sucks learning. You said yourself, Derek. I mean, player development's not linear. It's absolutely true. But the one thing that stands out to me is this has been happening for a lot more than you would like to see in a top rated guy like him, like Bayo. And I'm not pushing the panic button, but I'm like, come on, dude, get it together. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm mixed a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like, come on, I'm starting to get really frustrated. That's my
yeah, I
take.
see that. Yeah, I see that. Jordan, do you have any thoughts on the Bayo start?
Yeah, you mentioned it, Derek. Like a couple breaks go his way, it's a completely different outing. He did get a ground ball that Emmanuel Valdez couldn't reach, barely. It like nicked off the end of his glove, and that kind of spiraled the inning from there. Kind of similar to what we saw from Tanner Houck the last couple of years. It's like, oh, one break doesn't go his way, and the inning just goes goes down the toilet. So that's kind of what happened with Bayo, in his start. I agree that it's growing frustrating because this Red Sox team is better than we kind of expected them to be, and Bayo is kind of what's kind of dragging them down. And he was the guy that I don't want to say people viewed as a sure thing, but it's like, oh, we're worried about if Houck can hold up over 162, if Whitlock at the time, obviously that didn't happen, but if Whitlock can hold up, if Cutter can hold up, but Bayo was the guy that was going to provide innings. He was, even if his ERA was around 4, he would show plenty of signs that he was going to eventually emerge as this frontline starter. What I will say, and I know that the expectations of him with the extension are he's going to become an ace caliber pitcher. That may not have really ever been his ceiling, even coming up to the minor leagues. He was always kind of projected more as a 2, high end 3 caliber pitcher, but he's only counting as not for 9.1 mil against the tax the duration of his contract. Even if he's a 5 starter, as long as he doesn't suck, they're going to get good value out of it, because the value of a 5 starter is going to be closer to probably 13 or 14 mil by the time that contract's up. So I'm not really necessarily worried about the contract, and it really rubbed me the wrong way listening to like Jonathan Papelbon talk on the Unobstructed View broadcast during Bayo's start, saying like he hated the fact that Bayo got his extension. And I've seen a lot of people talking about how he strikes them as a guy who got paid and no longer cares. I think he probably cares too much. Like you see it. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. If he like nobody's Gronk spiking a baseball on the mound or throwing their glove if they don't care when they're not doing well. He cares too much. And I'm of the belief that I think that maybe he could benefit from maybe like 3 or 4 weeks in AAA. They have not opted to do that, which I wasn't necessarily so pro that I'm pissed they're not sending him down, but I think it was, push him back a little bit, let him, kind of figure things out mentally, and we, go from there. I mean, what's his next start's against Miami, so that's not a good team.
Yeah,
So he
July
should
3rd.
be able to do well. So he should be able to do well. Maybe he'll have Casas back by then as well. So the team will be better behind him in all likelihood, and we'll go from there. But this season's not going to be salvageable for him. He's going to have to pitch like an ace the rest of the year to get his ERA below 4 in all likelihood. Assuming he pitches like 60, 70 more innings. But I care more about how he finishes the year rather than I care about what his overall numbers look like, So it's really long-term outlook hasn't changed. Short-term outlook, it's frustrating, but it's possible that he could still, take something into the offseason to be happy with.
Mm-hmm. If I could
Yeah,
add to that really quick, I mean, we as fans, you put the expectation very high with Bale, right? Like Jordan said, ace, 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 ace. You look at the depth chart, right? At the beginning of the year, we didn't know what Hauk was going to be. We didn't know what Crawford was going to be. We didn't know what Pavetta was going to be. We didn't know what Whitlock was going to be. But there was one guy we all pointed to say, this is the guy who can lead the rotation, Giolito excluded. And it was Brayan Bello, the guy who got the extension. I even had a take earlier in the year that he was going to throw a no hitter. That's, I mean, is that still in the realm? Yeah. But, like, am I not that confident in it? Yeah.
I
But
mean, Homer Bailey threw 2, so
Homer Bailey
anyone
threw
can throw
2.
one.
Good point.
Domingo Harmon threw one like last
Philip
year. That was a
Humber
perfect
threw
game.
It was a
Actually.
perfect game. Perfect game.
And
Look where he is
you
now.
know who Bale's probably starting against in like a couple of weeks? The
Luzardo.
Oakland A's.
Oh.
No, the
True.
Oakland A's. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like I've seen crazier things happen.
Might be there,
I mean,
too.
I almost thought I was in person when Anibal Sanchez almost no hit the Red Sox with the Tigers and had a combined no hitter with the Tigers in Game 1 of the ALCS in 2013. Like I remember that because I was there and thinking. I was remember thinking in the ninth inning, I'm like, no, we can't get no hit in the postseason, right? And then thank the Lord, Daniel Nava comes in and base hit, and with one out in the ninth and saves the misery, the only hit the Red Sox had all game.
Shout out
But
Daniel Nava.
yeah, shout out Daniel Nava, but like that could happen. But I think with Bayo too, it's kind of the tale of two seasons. We've done this a lot on like the minor league show where with like Wilkerman Gonzalez, like last year, his April was like bad. He had like a 6 ERA in April, and then the rest of the way he had like a ERA around 3, maybe even less than that. And it was like you can't just necessarily look at Bayo's going to have this thing where if he pitches great the rest of the way, has like a 3 ERA like from All Star break on, you can't really look at the full season numbers in turn because that doesn't give you the context, right? Because even if he ends the season with a 4.50 ERA, that doesn't tell you the full story. So I think that's the thing. You kind of once you hit the All Star break, I think I have to put first half Bayo in the rear view and see what he does post All Star break. That All Star break will be a nice reset for him as well. It'll give him a little bit of time to work on things if he needs it.
Right. Yeah, good point. It's tough because obviously he doesn't have a track record in September. He doesn't have a track record, a good enough one, period. But what we can only go with what we've gone off of, or what we have, rather. We can only go off of what we have currently. And what do we have currently? Bayo sucks in September. Could he turn it around? Absolutely. But this is where he starts to peak. It's not, we haven't seen a consistent, like, oh, Bayo's good here, Bayo's good there, Bayo's good here, Bayo's good there. We haven't really had that yet. Is it learning? Yes, he's learning. So, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Learning curve, sure. I'll just use learning curve.
Yeah. Here's the only maybe positive I guess you could take from his year so far. He's got a 4.11 Sierra, which is in line with his career. 4.07 in 2022, 4.18 last year, Sierra. His FIP is 4.84 this year, but he had a 4.54 FIP last year, so it's worse, but it's not like extremely worse. The real difference is obviously the 5.55 ERA right now, right? So you could maybe point to him being a little bit unlucky in that sense. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not like I'm trying to also like be a little bit positive too about Bayo because it's not. Yeah, it looks worse too because he just arguably came off the worst start a Red Sox pitcher has had this year, if not close to it. So there's also that.
It was actually arguably his worst start of his career.
Yeah,
it was the shortest. So there's that, and like. As bad as Bayo's peripherals are, they do point to better days ahead. Like, he's got to get there somehow, and he's not going to get to a 4.85 ERA or 4.6 ERA without a stretch where his ERA is under 3.5. So there's going to be some progression here with Bayo. He's not going to be a 5.5 ERA pitcher by season's end, even if his ERA is 5-ish at season's end. He's finished his second half will have been better than his first half, and you could kind of take that into the offseason. The big issues are he's walking guys like crazy, and he's giving up a ton of home runs. If he's starting to keep the ball in the ballpark, or he's not getting behind guys in counts, because he's getting lit up when it gets behind in the count, because he doesn't, because his fastball stinks. There's that. Or his sinker,
He
I should
doesn't.
say,
Oh yeah,
stinks. His sinker stinks.
leaks over the plate.
His changeup, while still a very good pitch, is not. It's not as enough of a separator from his sinker. I mean, velocity wise, it's about an 8 mile an hour difference, which is fine. It's decent, but it lands in the same zone if you look at his heat map. So hitters are just sitting on low and away, or I guess low and away to a righty, down and into a lefty. And down and into a lefty is literally the lefty sweet spot, because their uppercut swing goes right through it. So, I mean, there's going to be some adjustments made. I mean, he doesn't throw his four seam anymore, which was a huge part of his arsenal last year. He's got to adjust to it. And, if it doesn't happen this year, so be it. If it happens, hopefully it happens soon, though.
I think the next step is adding a cutter. I think that's the next step, because you look at I know Houck doesn't have a cutter, but he's different because Houck's sinker split don't have the same necessarily movement. It doesn't have the same movement necessarily, and obviously Houck has this slider, sweeper, whatever you want to call it, right? Bello, I think if he adds a cutter to that mix and kind of becomes a 4-pitch pitcher again, because then a cutter's something you can throw to lefties as well. A cutter's like an underrated pitch. Throw it in on the hands of lefties, and then you have the sinker running away from it as well. The only thing I would say, with Bello, the rough thing is he'll try and throw that front hip sinker to lefties, and that's a thing that they've been doing this year. They've been working with him. That's a new thing for him this year. But a lot of the time, it's been kind of leaking back to the middle of the plate, right? Leaking out over the plate. Instead of starting it in and off the plate and getting it on the edge, it'll start on the edge and end up over the middle of the plate, right? So, and that's also an experience thing. You also got to remember that Bello, this is only his age 25 season, right? He doesn't turn 26 till May of next year, right? He's still extremely young. There's not he's 25 is not young, but it is relatively young. And I think you also have to remember that, too. He's not 30, he's not 28, right? So there's also that to remember.
Right, and the other thing I will say, too, is, Houck and Crawford and Pivetta, they're starting to figure things out, right? Especially Houck. How old's Houck? 29? 28?
28.
28. Yeah. He's also had more experience in the league. When we saw Andrew Bailey come in and Breslow, they changed a lot with these pitchers. They said the potential's there. We're just going to change your whole approach. In Bello's cases, you're not throwing that fastball. Fastballs, we don't like. Four-seamers, at least. We don't like four-seamers unless they're really good.
Bello's wasn't.
Bello's wasn't. Pivetta is the only one where it's fine. You know what? Fine. Your fastball can be really good. But my point is simply, not everyone adapts. Everyone adapts to change differently. That's a phrase commonly used throughout anything you do in life. Just people are better at adapting. Houck, perfect example, throwing the much better splitter, throwing his pitches much better. Bello, maybe this is a season where it's okay, I know what I want to work on, and here's what I'm going to do in the offseason. Boom. Then he gets better maybe next season. But what's also frustrating is, I think we all said it too, the Sox are not out of it. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're in this thing. The last thing you want is a struggling pitcher who is only sinking the ship even further. That's the last thing you want. And I think that's what a lot of Red Sox fans are frustrated with right now, too.
Hot take, though. If there's ever a time to have a guy work through his struggles, though, it's now. There's as well.
Absolutely. It's now.
And I'm not, and it's kind of a counter argument. And I'm not saying, if Bello's struggling, that's one thing, right? That's a totally different thing. If he's just getting absolutely lit up every single start, that's a totally different situation. But, if he has struggles, but he also has some good starts in there as well, I think that's a different conversation. I think it's just kind of magnified because there's been 3 in a row, I think, bad starts from him as well.
I have two more quick sorry, just two more
No,
quick
yeah.
points before we get strayed too far away from what Jason said about how long it took Hauk to kind of develop into, what he's been. Hauk got thrown around. I mean, I know he didn't have an extension, neither did Cutter. Hauk has been thrown around from the rotation to the bullpen to the minor leagues, etc., throughout his major league career since 2021. I mean, I remember he didn't make the opening day roster in 2021, and everyone was freaking out about it. And then 2022, he made 2 starts and then was kicked to the bullpen for the rest of the year. So I'm not saying they have to do the same thing with Bello, where they throw him in the bullpen or send him down or anything like that. But how people forget he had a 5 ERA last year. And him developing his splitter, which has been really, I don't think it's the deal breaker between him being elite and being bad, but that took 3 years to develop. Like, it's not going to be, and it's not like Hauk was, some stiff that they drafted in the 17th round and he just happened to become a major leaguer. He was a
It's a
first round
first-round
pick. He was a first round pick. I mean, Cutter was kind of more of a middle round guy, but also
16th round, yeah.
16th round, he was minor leagues, bullpen, back into the rotation. Like these guys, and I know Cutter hasn't been spectacular since his little run at the beginning of the year, but these guys, they weren't just thrown into the mix and immediately became good. This took time. And I know Derrik also said development isn't always linear. That is 100% accurate. And that's, kind of what we're seeing with Bello. And it doesn't mean he's going to be good in 2 years. He may very well suck, but people are closing the book on him at age 25. And I just think that's irresponsible.
Yeah, you got to remember he's the youngest guy in this rotation, and it's not really close. Hauk's 28. He just turned 28, I think. Crawford 28. Pavetta's 31. And then Cooper Criswell is what, like 20? I think he's about to turn 28 in like a month or so, but I think it's still 27. So like Bello having just turned 25 about a month or so, just over a month ago. Like he's by far the youngest in this rotation. But I want to kind of move out the Bello talk. We do want to kind of have a little bit of a series prediction here, since we haven't done series predictions in a little bit, Jason. So we'll do this Padres series, some series predictions. 3 games against the Padres. Bogart's returning to Boston, even though he is not playing. I'll start it off with you, Jason. How many games do you have the Red Sox winning the series?
So let's see. It's Pavetta versus Vasquez Friday. Saturday, Hauk versus King. And then Sunday, you got Wink versus Waldron. I have 2 out of 3.
Great knuckleballer.
That's going to be an interesting game.
I hope they smash Matt Waldron just for MLB The Show purposes. Like, I hope they put up like 10 on him. Just for MLB The Show purposes. I'm taking 2 out of 3 as well.
I think if anything, they're going to drop the first game. I don't know. It's a stupid Apple TV Plus game. I just hope they lose that and win the 1 game so I can watch.
Oh, yeah. That's Apple TV. Great.
That's the sole reason why I have them losing.
I'm a little iffy on the Winkowski start, because I know we just looked really good out of the bullpen, but like mop up role, totally different, right, situation. So I don't know. We'll see. But I really hope they put up 10 on Matt Waldron. I hope they put up 10 on him. Jordan, what do you have this series?
I think they'll take 2 out of 3 as well. I'm hoping they win tomorrow because I'll be in attendance for it. That's ridiculous that they put Bogarts' return to Fenway on Apple TV, by the way. That's ridiculous because it's just stupid. I mean, I know Bogarts isn't playing in the game, but like he could have been, and you're doing that shit. That's just garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be going if I weren't here or if I weren't on vacation. So I've gone to Apple TV. I went to the first or second Apple TV game. It was the one that stayed on 2-homer game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Lucky you.
Hat.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but so yeah, we all get 2 out of 3. We'll move on now to kind of some trade deadline discussion because there's a lot of talk about this, and I'm kind of I've said this before in the Pesky Report group chat, so Jordan can absolutely tell you what I'm saying is the truth. There's a very big side of me that would love for them to just kind of like not fall off a cliff, but fall a little bit and be like, okay, we're gonna trade guys in, bring in prospects, and not trade any prospects. I mean, be great for the minor league show. That's for that's for sure. Um, but at the end of the day, it's a very interesting situation with the Red Sox to do. They could buy, they could sell, they could do both. They have expiring deals that they might want to move. Maybe they want to bring in guys who have more than just the rest of the year left. For this year and beyond. There's a lot of stuff they could do. So we'll start with just the simple question of buy or sell. And I'll open this discussion because to me, I think there's a good chance they're going to do both. I would not be shocked to see them buy on guys who have years left. Even if it's only 2 years, I don't think they're going to be rental hunting unless it's the correct trade. And then I think it only makes sense if you're not keeping Kenley, if you're not keeping Chris Martin, if you're not keeping Pavetta after this year, Tyler O'Neill. I think it just value-wise makes sense to move them. This Red Sox team, as good as they have been, are you going to be able to make the moves at the deadline that are going to really put you in a position to be a legitimate contender while also rationalizing keeping these guys and not bringing in the value for them? And I think that's the question you have to ask. To me, as good as this team has been, I don't know if they're good enough to warrant a full like buy-in for this year and keeping the guys who could be sold as rentals. That's how I see it. I'm not saying they're not going to bring in additions to the team. I could see a guy with maybe 2 years left coming in, or maybe 3 years, like 2 years left after this year coming in, or 1 year left after this year coming in. I could see that. I just don't necessarily see I don't see them swinging for the fences with a big rental, basically, is what I'm saying. That's kind of how I see it. Jordan, what are your thoughts on the buy or sell?
Yeah, I think they'll do a little bit of both as well. And I do think, as ironic as it sounds, because all offseason he was the guy that was the most traded veteran on the team, I don't think you can trade Kenley Jansen anymore. Like, I just don't. If you're good enough to make the playoffs and you believe you're good enough to make the playoffs, I know they're getting Liam Hendricks back, but why trade your Hall of Fame closer? He's been great this year, and that doesn't mean he necessarily won't fall, kind of start tapering off in the second half. He did a little bit last year. But as a team that's super young, you need your vets. You need those guys that kind of help you get through the dog days of August and September, and early August into mid-September. You need those guys. And Kenley's a big calming influence. They love him in there, even though I think a lot of Red Sox fans hated him entering the year. They still loved him in Boston. They still loved him in that clubhouse. I do think that if they don't view Pavetta as a long-term cog in the system, they definitely should move him. I think he's the guy that would get the most in return, just because teams are always hungry for that extra starter. Like, I think the Giants would make a ton of sense for Pavetta. But I do think they'll do both. If they swing for a rental, it'll be a reliever. But I think anybody else, they're going to go after guys who impact not just this year, but next year, and then maybe even 2026, depending on who we're talking about positionally.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, what are your thoughts on buy or sell?
So, Derek, if you're basing your decision on you just don't want prospects being traded, be quiet. I think that's what it is.
I'm just saying that's like a dream of mine, though.
I know, but I mean, here's what you have to look at. Sox against teams above 500, they're 13-23. That's not great, is it?
And those are the teams you're going to play in the postseason.
Right, exactly. So you got to value. The front office has got to make a decision on how much do you value these guys, right? How much do you value this team to make it? They do own a wild card spot. Then they're tied, I think, with the Royals. Let me double check. Yeah, they're tied with the Royals currently for the third wild card, right? The team coming up is the Astros, who are red hot. Or not red. Or yeah, they are red hot. They've won 8 of the last 10. They're 500, but you never know. My assessment right now, you're too good. You're too good not to buy. And you don't have to go all in. That's the other thing. You have prospects you can work with. You don't have to go all in. All you need to do is get a couple of good guys, and if you don't make it, oh well, you tried. That sends a message to the fan base being like, okay, at least they tried. My issue is, well, I personally, I'll be fine if they sell because it's like, okay, we don't value this. We don't value this team. We don't think they can make it fine. But none of this, I don't think they're going to do a subtract to add. I personally don't think they're going to go one way or the other. And right now, June 27th, they're going to buy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a month till the deadlines. That makes it interesting. Because anything could happen. They could stay hot, and you're looking. Then they could be secured in a wild card spot at the deadline, and yeah, you're gonna buy. They also could go cold, and then it's like, okay, nope, they're selling, right? Or they could just continue playing solid and stick around the bubble of the deadline, maybe in the last spot, maybe just out. Um, and so we'll see, right? I think it's very hard to predict even a month away, and also teams haven't fully turned their attention to the deadline either because now the draft is All Star Weekend or week or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know. But to the All Star break, not to the All Star break, so which is stupid, but that's a whole nother conversation. Um, well, now we'll start throwing things around in terms of specific trades, right? Because there's a lot of guys the Red Sox could target. Is someone a fit? Are they not a fit? If the Red Sox sell, is there a specific team maybe they could look to trade someone to, or maybe a certain return that could make sense. So we'll start with that, and I'll kind of start with I sent this to Jason the other day, and this is a 3-team trade, and the Red Sox are minor players in this trade. They're not big players. This is contingent on a Luis Robert trade, and Luis Robert being sent to the Mariners. But the idea I kind of thunk up of, if Lou Bob were to go to the Mariners have Harry Ford, who can headline a deal. They have Tyler Locklear, right, who's in the big leagues, first baseman. I think he's played third base. I don't know if he hasn't played in the big leagues yet, but they have Ty France at first base. And then you also have a Jonathan Clase, who, if you bring in Lou Bob, 2 of your 3 outfield spots are filled. They also have Haniger, who they like. I don't know how much big league playing time he gets this year, although he has been in the big league for a tiny bit of time this year. Send that to the White Sox, and then the White Sox turn around and then flip Clase, Jonathan Clase, who is a speed outfielder. You got to remember that. Speed outfielder, so fits the mold Red Sox want, as well as Eric Fetty to Boston, and the Red Sox give up a package of Nick York because positionally, not the greatest fit. They give up, and then you give up, probably have to give up like a Wilhelm Gonzalez, and then maybe I did use baseball trade values. I added Hunter Dobbins. I love Hunter Dobbins, friend of the show. I don't want him to be traded, but I also recognize that could get him a path to the big leagues. And as much as I don't like him to be traded, if it gets him a path to the big leagues, I'm okay with it, I guess. And so that's the idea. I don't love giving up York and Wilhelm Gonzalez, but how I see it in this sense too, the White Sox desperately have needed a second baseman for how long now? Nick York can fill that. Wilhelm Gonzalez hasn't had the greatest of years, so you're kind of trading him a little bit low, but at the same time, he's on the 40-man. You're going to have a lot of 40-man questions this offseason. There's that. And then Dobbins as well. I think he's 40-man eligible this offseason as well. And then you get Fetty and Clase. Fetty has this year and next year, and then Clase has all 6 years of control. Speedy outfielder, fits the mold, and if a Jarren Duran trade were to come into the picture at some point this upcoming offseason, Clase could be a very feasible replacement to replace Duran in the outfield because of the speed factor. So that's kind of what I have.
I like it. I mean, Fetty was a guy that brought a lot of intrigue in the offseason because of his kind of turnaround overseas, right? Was
KBO.
it KBO? I couldn't
Fits
remember.
the Breslow profile as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't throw a fastball.
Yeah. I couldn't remember if he was KBO or NPB, but he did a lot of work overseas to get himself back to the major leagues, a la a guy like Merrill Kelly, who has dominated, or not necessarily dominated, but been a very stable pitcher for the D-backs and was their best pitcher in the playoffs last year. So I'm not saying Eric Fetty's the same, but he's another guy that can give you innings, and especially if you, I mean, like I said earlier, wanted to maybe do with Bello what you've done with Houck and Cutter in the past, and just see if he can maximize his stuff. Just as far as this season is concerned, that's a guy that can slot into the rotation, and I think that that'd be beneficial for the Red Sox, even if you still are trotting out a bullpen game possibly every fifth day. So, but I like it. And the Mariners would absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, well, like Harry Ford for them is like the White Sox could use a Harry Ford, right? But the Mariners, like, he's blocked, and catchers, you can't play two catchers realistically.
Right.
You can't, and they also have not Mitch. They have Mitch Garver DHing, so like you can't play three catchers. Definitely can't play three catchers. So there's that whole situation. Locklear, like I said, blocked by Ty France in some sense. And then the White Sox would also get Nick York, who they need a second baseman, and then you get two pitching prospects from the Red Sox as well. The Mariners, obviously, like I said, get Lubob, and the Red Sox would get Fetty and Clase. Obviously, because I also figured too, Clase, the White Sox, they could use an outfielder if they trade Lubob. Don't get me wrong, but like, do they really though? Like, it's not like some like they're going rebuild anyways, so it's not like they need some big league replacement to play the outfield. I know Locklear could be interesting because of the fact that he plays first, and he's listed as a third baseman on baseball trade values. I don't know if he can play third. Moncada, that's you can't count on him being healthy ever, so maybe he could play third. I know they have Vaughn at first, but I mean, it's the White Sox are rebuilding. You get 5 prospects in that trade for Lubob. I think it makes sense. I mean, you also do have to trade Fetty. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like two separate trades. Just kind of comes together as a 3-team because the White Sox then flip Clase after they get him from the Mariners to the Red Sox with Fetty for the pieces from the Red Sox. So that's how I kind of drew it up. Jordan, do you have any specific targets that you would like the Red Sox to maybe go after?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to tweet an under the radar candidate or trade target that before you told me that we were going to talk deadline, so I held off on it. Guy that's kind of bounced around is somebody that I've been intrigued with, and it's mostly because of my admiration for Mitch Garver over the last few years. I am eyeballing Tyler Stevenson in Cincinnati. They've got to be giving up on him soon. He still hits the ball incredibly hard. He's got some power, especially to the pull side. I know he's a catcher, and they got Wong, and they have Teal coming up. But I would treat him like Dollar Tree Mitch Garver. Let him DH, teach him first base, so that way he can get himself onto the field every once in a while, and you can get Casas off of his feet every once in a while, but keep him in the lineup. Tyler Stevenson makes a ton of sense. I don't have baseball trade values up. I know Stevenson's value's got to be dog crap. There's no way that anybody's giving up any crazy prospects for him. I think I know Noel Marte just came back, but Jonathan India is still there, but he sucks. Nick York makes a ton of sense in this trade. I had to make sure I mentioned that Jonathan India is terrible. Nick York going in that trade as well. Maybe you throw in a pitcher in the 20 in your top like 20 to 30 range. Maybe that be like Connolly Early or somebody like that, or Hunter Dobbins as another guy who could get a path to the big league. I mean, like you said with the White Sox
Yeah,
deal, the
I
path to the
think you
big leagues
could
in
look at.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think you could look at. I have it up right now. You could look at maybe like a package of like a York and maybe a Dobbins, someone like in that range. If it's not Dobbins, it could obviously be someone else. You could if they don't want pitching. I mean, you could look at like the Nathan Hickey route, maybe. Give them a bat first. I put catcher in air quotes because as much as I love Nathan Hickey, I don't know if he's a catcher in the big leagues. That's a whole nother
He's
can
Ryan
of
Domit.
worms.
He's
That's a
Ryan
whole,
Domit.
or like someone along those lines, or maybe even like a Dalton Rogers or someone like
Hayden
like
Mullins,
that.
maybe somebody in that kind of echelon of Red Sox pitching prospects.
Yeah, exactly, and like that's a kind of deal that would be able to get it done value wise. It just depends on how interested the Reds would be in Nick York, which because that's also a question mark because they do have Matt McLean,
That's true.
long term. But at the same time, like you have a DH spot, I guess. I don't know, but they signed Candelario long term, and then Christian Encarnacion Strand, but he hasn't been that good this year, and there's a lot of question marks with the Reds.
Yeah, they're terrible though. They should very well be in the market for making trades, and I think like Frankie Montas has got to be in the mix as well for just in general, not necessarily for a Red
Yeah,
Sox
yeah, yeah,
standpoint,
yeah.
but he's
No,
got to
yeah.
be a guy that got to be looking into trading as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like I brought up with Jason. I'm like, I'm not that I think the Red Sox would do it, but like if they were looking for rentals, like give me like a Jack Flaherty. Like screw it, right? like if you're going for, I mean, obviously I think the Tigers are going to get a haul from him, and I don't think the Red Sox are kind of. I don't think that's where the Red Sox are going to go in terms of giving up a haul for a rental. But that I think any significant deadline deal for the Red Sox kind of has to revolve around Nick York, especially considering what he's doing in AAA now. Because you look at the other prospects that are realistically like tradable, like you're not, or just look at top prospects in general. Like none of them are really tradable. You're not trading Meyer, Anthony, Teal, anyone like that. You're not trading Blaze. You're not trading Christian Campbell. You're not trading Cespedes. You're not trading, right. So for the Red Sox, any kind of big trade, even if they weren't going to trade Perales anyways, but they definitely literally can't now because he's got to get Tommy John, unfortunately. So I feel like any significant trade kind of has to revolve around Nick York and teams that would be willing to take on Nick York. That's how I see it.
Can I add something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think York, let's see. But I think there's one guy that I really think the Sox should try to revolve a deal around. That's Matthew Lugo. Look how hot he's been. He's been insane right now. Right? Ripping it. He's ripping the cover off the ball, literally. And the one thing is, the Tigers work? Not really, because like left field, you have Riley Green, but I don't know, maybe they do him as a third baseman still. But
I'm sure he could still probably play third base. But like you're not going to get a Flaherty, and I feel like if you're trading Lugo, it's probably more for like a rental reliever. Because as good as he's been,
true.
the value still isn't at that same place because he
Right.
did also have a really bad year last year. And as good as he's been he was in Double A. Like he did have like a 2-week slump or so in Triple A after his first week. So he's had I know like today I think he's had a very solid game in Triple A. So it's not like he's been terrible in AAA. It's just he hasn't been tearing the living cover off the ball, but he's still been solid in AAA, right? But I just think because of last year and whatnot, if you're trading him, I think it's more kind of reliever rental, Lugo maybe plus like a lower end prospect maybe.
Right.
Something.
I'm not saying you have to revolve
lines.
it around him. I'm saying you can package.
No. I know. I'm just saying like I think like the more like if he were to be traded, it'd be more that type of trade. Now in terms of the Red Sox selling. To me, the most obvious sell piece is Tyler O'Neill. And one, because I think in terms of outfielders, I think it's pretty limited in terms of guys who are going to be traded because you can't bank on a Lubob getting traded. And you know what team, if Lubob isn't getting traded, could use an outfielder? I don't know. Maybe the team I just suggested Lubob gets traded to.
Yeah.
In the Seattle Mariners, right? And obviously, that system is, I'm not 100% sure what would be the best look from getting that system. You have a guy like Emerson Hancock you maybe take a flyer on, although he struggled in the big leagues, but has a lot of control left, right? He's only 25. Maybe you can also look at bringing in, along with him, maybe you bring in like a younger prospect as well. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the Mariner system greatly outside of like the top end of the system. And even though it's Tyler O'Neill, I don't think they're trading like a top end guy. I mean, if they could get, like I said, Jonathan Clase, I really like him a lot. And I like the fact that he's a speed guy, which seems to be what Alex Cora likes as a manager. And if you can, and that also, like I said this with the Robert 3-team trade idea. If a Duran offseason trade were to materialize, Clase is very well a somewhat similar profile. Obviously not the same, but in terms of being a speed first guy, he's got 70 grade speed, right? So that's a guy who, in terms of, you trade Duran could get you a massive haul, and then you can slide Clase into left field with Rafaela in center and Abreu in right, and that's your outfield. You still have Ref Snyder to hit against lefties, and maybe he even competes for an everyday spot with how well he's been hitting righties this year. That's what I would like to do. Like, as I am high on Clase, so there's also that. And like I said, I think the Mariners, they could very well use an outfielder, and they only have a 4.5 game lead on Houston now. I think I brought this up last week. There was someone on I don't know if I brought it up on the show, but I know I brought it up with you, Jason. How someone on Twitter put out a tweet of surely a 10 game lead can't be blown, and then a week later it was down to 5 games. And I mean, typical Mariners, right? But they definitely could use an outfielder, and I think someone like a Tyler O'Neill would definitely help them because he's very solid defensively. Just hits absolute tanks, which that kind of fits the Mariners when you have J Rod, Cal Raleigh, Mitch Garver. That's a lineup that hits a lot of tanks. And then you look on their outfield, Luke Raley's kind of just in a platoon. So is Dominic Canzone with Haniger and Victor Robles. But, it's Victor Robles. If anything, he should just be bench defense and, maybe steal a base here and there. So they very well could use an outfielder is basically what I'm saying. And I think O'Neill would play every day there. And you slide Canzone maybe to the bench, and you kind of just roll Raley in a platoon with maybe Haniger. But it would allow Tyler O'Neill to play every day for a team that very well needs an outfielder and could use a power source in the middle of their lineup that can carry them on their back if the rest of the lineup goes cold, which we've seen countless times from the Mariners in the past how many years.
Would be a homecoming, too, because Tyler O'Neill broke out with Seattle, too, at the beginning of his career. So they're familiar with him.
Yeah, there's that
Marco Gonzalez.
Oh, God. Don't bring up Marco Gonzalez. That's one of... Marco Gonzalez, oh God. But no, I'll give it to you, Jordan. If you're looking at selling, who's the guy that if you're the Red Sox you would sell?
Nick Pivetta people point to Bello and say that he's been super disappointing this year, but I feel like Pivetta's right there with him as it pertains to actual expectations. Bello's expectations, if he didn't have an extension, Bello wouldn't have had these ridiculous expectations that he's had. I mean, he'd still be expected to be better, but it wouldn't be go ahead and be our ace kind of guy. Pivetta, people were picking him to be an all-star, dark horse Cy Young candidate, and I know he's been fine, but he's been very disappointing, for me at least. I mean, it's either been razor-sharp Pivetta or horrible Pivetta. It's been essentially 2021 to 2023 Pivetta. It's been more of the same. Eventually, you are who you are, but a lot of teams out there, again, like I said earlier, could use an extra starting pitcher. The one thing Papelbon said during the Unobstructed View broadcast that made sense was he's never once been on a team that didn't go all the way where he said, man, we could have used one more bat. It's always been we could have used one more arm. And I think Nick Pivetta, regardless of performance this year, again, he's been fine. He's going to be one of the hottest commodities on the trade market if he's truly available. I mean, the stuff is there. There's going to be a team out there that's super smart that thinks that they can unlock what Pivetta has been trying to unlock since 1993. It's been we've been dealing with this for forever. And I'll look back on the Nick Pivetta era fondly, but I think he could get a haul for you. Not anything crazy, nothing like what Jack Flaherty could probably fetch Detroit, but could you get 2 prospects, maybe somebody's number 7 and number 14 prospect? Sure. And I would absolutely do that. As far as teams go, San Francisco, again, like I said earlier, makes a ton of sense. I think Atlanta makes a ton of sense because Strider's hurt. Freed's been hurt the last few years. St. Louis makes a ton of sense as well. I mean, really any bubble team in the National League makes a ton of sense because of the 15 National League teams, 12 of them are within 3 games of a wild card spot. So,
and the only team that maybe doesn't make sense might be the D-backs, just because you look at, if they're healthy, they have Gallen and Kelly and Erod and Jordan Montgomery and
it's Brandon Pfaadt.
And Brandon Pfaadt too. Yeah, Brandon Pfaadt noise. So it's where if everyone's healthy, it's kind of where does he fit in? But here's the thing about Nick Pivetta: he doesn't fit in your rotation. Chuck him to the bullpen. Right, there's also that side of it too. So
you also can never have too much depth pitching.
That too. So that's what I say. Maybe he doesn't fit the Diamondbacks, but maybe he does at the same time, right? Because Erod still hasn't pitched this year, and Montgomery hasn't been great, and you never know, at the snap of a finger someone could go down, right? So I said maybe he doesn't fit, but he very well still could. If it's up to me, I would trade him to St. Louis and see if St. Louis would be willing to give Ryan Fernandez back. I give me Ryan Fernandez back, please. But I think St. Louis definitely could be an option. Like I said, I'm not like super familiar with like the lower ends of their farm system, at all. Like literally not at all. So do not like count on me knowing their farm system. But Gordon Graceffo is a right-handed pitcher. He's thrown 75 innings in AAA this year with a 3.84 ERA. He's 24, so he's not like old. But that's someone maybe you like have a trade with him, and he's their number per MLB pipeline. He's the number 8 prospect. Maybe you start a trade with him, and then you maybe add in a secondary piece to that trade, and that's kind of the trade you do, something along those lines, maybe. Like I said, I don't know their system greatly, so I can't really tell you like what would the who's like maybe good, or maybe someone who's like underrated in that system, because like I said, I don't know their system amazingly. Once you focus on one team's prospects, there's so many, it's hard to focus on other teams' system outside of like guys who are around the top 100, right? Because I think the Red Sox system itself has like 100 people, 100 prospects or so. So also that, but yeah, I do agree with the Pavetta thing as well. So it's also that. Jason, do you have any trades that you would like the Red Sox, any person the Red Sox you'd like the Red Sox to trade away? Probably, I would take that as a no. I will take that as a no. Jason's been he's on a trip, and he's in a somewhat public room, unfortunately. So there are other people around that are being a little bit loud. So unfortunately for him, he's not going to get Simon. But Jason and I have talked about this in previous episodes with trades, so you can hear his thoughts there. Last thing I do want to bring up too is just like on the trade front for the Red Sox. Outside of that is, I think when you look at this Red Sox team, and everyone says, oh, a lot of people say their pitching prospects aren't good. Maybe they should target pitching prospects if they're going to sell. That's not how it works. You don't just target pitching prospects just because you need pitching prospects, right? I mean, obviously, you'd like to bring some in, but at the same time, you get what's the best package, and the best the best package you get doesn't have any pitchers. You still take that package. I don't think Yoshida's tradable. Honestly, I don't think he is, and honestly, I still have faith in him. Like, maybe I'm crazy, but like, I still have faith in him. You do have Casas coming back. Jason and I have talked about a Jordan Leandre trade this offseason, maybe. But that's an off-season move that you do not make that move in season at all. So, and then obviously, Red Sox, maybe you go get a rental shortstop, maybe like a defensive shortstop. I don't know if I don't think the Giants would trade like a Nick Ahmed, but like someone along like those lines of being kind of a defense first shortstop. Maybe they're on the bench, right? But they can fill in at short. Something like that, I don't think would be a bad idea. Just because I like Rafael a lot, but like his value is the greatest when he's playing center field. Not just because he's great in center field, but then you also get Jarren Duran in left field. So, and this isn't like, not like Tyler O'Neill or Rob Refsnyder are bad defensively, but like, that's arguably the best defensive outfield in baseball if you go Duran, Rafaela, and Willier. So there's also that side of it too, in terms of maybe you get a veteran shortstop. If you make the postseason, now you have a good defensive shortstop where, yeah, just hit him ninth in the lineup, right? Also that side of it too.
To go back to your 3-team trade involving the Mariners and the White Sox, I'm thinking about the possibility of part of that 3-team trade, you're sending Tyler O'Neill to the Mariners now. Like you were talking
even
about,
that.
like they would load up their outfield. Granted, they'd all be right-handers, but you could platoon O'Neill with Luke Raley, and you'd maximize O'Neill's value there. And then as part of the package coming back, maybe you're not necessarily getting it from Seattle, but you get Eric Fetty and so we'll say Clase stays with the White Sox. You get Fetty, you get another prospect from a different prospect from Seattle that's like maybe in the teen range.
Or you get a
Then you
prospect
also
from
get or
the
the White Sox system, and you get Paul DeYoung,
yeah.
who's he's basically a 90-ish WRC plus guy, but he's got pull power and good defense at shortstop. So you stabilize the
Yeah.
defensive side of things. You get an extra starter, and you kill two birds with one stone. It does cost you a guy that the team seems to love in Tyler O'Neill, but you replace the power. It's not necessarily as potent, but you replace the power. You get a better defender at a much more premium position than corner outfield. And yeah, you keep the best defensive outfield, or one of the best defensive outfields in baseball, with Duran, Rafaela, and Abreu, with Refsnyder mixing in against lefties.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other point too to that as well is like, of getting just a veteran shortstop in general is also that now you have that guy, they don't have to start, right? It doesn't have to be a starting caliber player, but have them on the bench and they can slide in at shortstop every so often, right? Because I love David Hamilton, but like, do I want David Hamilton playing shortstop every single day? Probably not. Like, I still am of the belief David Hamilton long term is best suited to play second base. Now, as part of that, because Marcelo Meyer's coming, yeah, is that part of it? And I truly am a believer in Marcelo Meyer being able to play shortstop. So in that case, David Hamilton would have to not be able to play shortstop anyways. But I think I will also too interesting note on David Hamilton. He's played outfield before, right? So if you're in a panic and you need an outfielder, I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't like to put David Hamilton out there, but guess what? You can do it, right? I don't know if it's the most feasible thing to do because he hasn't played it in the big leagues this year, and doing it in Fenway is a little bit of a different challenge. But like, it is an option. It's not a non-option as well. And then also to Emmanuel Valdez, I do feel like he's going to start to cool off at some point, probably, if he hasn't already, And then I do have faith in Vaughn Grissom, but like, he needs to be healthy. That's the biggest thing for him. He literally hasn't been healthy. He said they're saying now he hurt his other hamstring because the one that was injured wasn't 100%, so he's relying too much on the other hamstring. Just get him healthy. I don't care if it takes the rest of the year. Just get him healthy, right? You didn't trade Chris Sale for him to be playing at 60%, 70%, right? So get him healthy. That's the big thing with him. Get him healthy and then figure out what he can do. But yeah, that's kind of all I have on trade deadline. If you guys want to add anything, I'm all set.
Can I spread my Vlad delusion again?
Yeah, you can. Hey, we're all for delusion here.
Yeah, seriously though, like, talk about killing multiple birds with one stone, dude. Like, Vladdy, let's bring that man in. Like, let's just do it. I mean, like, seriously though, if he's available, that's going to create a bonanza around him because he's Vlad Guerrero Jr. So the name factor is going to be a part of it as well. But like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the American League teams that'll be in on him, just the American League teams, and remember, like, the entire National League is in the race as well. The Astros.
Also, why would the Blue Jays want to trade in division?
That's
There's
true.
Also that.
That's true.
And he has control.
If the Red Sox have the best trade package there, if they do,
Yeah, but are they gonna really want to trade one of the big three? Like,
I doubt it would cost that anyway. But I'm thinking more along the lines.
Well, if it's a full blown bidding war for him, like, you might have to give up one of them.
Maybe.
What about Pete? Alonso.
I don't love him.
No, me
He's
either.
a rental. I think I'd be. Like, if they traded for him, unless they went like stupid and traded for it. Like, if they traded one of the top like 5 or 6, I would convince myself that it's a good move, and it's not a bad move. I just would rather go after Vladdy or somebody else that's a right-handed power bat.
Well, to be fair, the last time the Red Sox traded a top 10 prospect of the trade deadline was when they traded Aldo Ramirez for Kyle Schwarber.
Hey.
And I like Aldo Ramirez. I feel bad for Aldo Ramirez, but like, the guy basically hasn't pitched at all since being traded. I think he's just starting to come back, and now
he's just starting to throw too.
Yeah, and it's 2024. He was traded in 2021. Think about that.
Yeah, but
I mean, I
think
feel bad for the guy. I'm not saying like the Red Sox, but you can't. But like, I just feel bad for the guy. But like at the same time, like that's literally that's the last time the Red Sox traded a top 10 prospect, and it ends up being for Schwarber, and we all know what happened with Schwarber. You know, the guy just was insane down the. I mean, he had to play first base. Unfortunately, that's a sight I never want to see again. But you know.
you didn't like him tipping the cap to the crowd in the middle of a playoff game for
No, that
fielding a
was
routine
nice, but
grounder.
like the other stuff were like routine grounder and bobble, and this isn't. I'm not throwing shade at Schwarber. I mean, he did the best he could do because the guy probably never played first base, except for maybe a little bit in Little League. But like the Red Sox kind of set him up for failure a little bit too.
I just want to point out that while I was talking about Vladdy getting traded to Boston, he hit a home run against the Yankees. So just want to point that out. That's my guy. He's been on a tear lately too, so that's only going to add to the trade package. But as I was saying before, like thinking about the American League teams that may want him, like Nathaniel Lowe hasn't been great for Texas, so Texas is a team. Seattle's a team because he's way better than Ty France. Houston, Boston, the Yankees. The pretty much half the teams in the mix in the American League are going to want him, and then again, there's the entire National League. So the bidding war would be crazy.
Dodgers,
them too because they
the
want
Dodgers
everybody
put him at third base
because they want everybody.
and then Max Muncy plays second base.
Exactly. But I would be right there till the very end if I were Craig Breslow with my finger on the send trade button. It, like again, there you have your guys you absolutely would not trade. I'm probably more comfortable dealing somebody in the top 10, like just outside of the big three.
To me, it depends on the trade. Honestly, that's honestly how I look at it. It depends on the trade because if you're trading for Vlad, like that's a totally different conversation than just trading for like a 1-year rental who's good but not great. Like it's a totally different conversation when it's someone like Vlad, right?
Would you trade Christian Campbell for him?
I think that's too much breakout potential with Campbell because I feel like you're trading him when he's really on the up.
But it's Vladdy too. Like that's a dude who could hit 40 home runs for you for years.
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just curious if
I'm looking like top 10, I'd be more comfortable. Maybe honestly, this does sound a little bit wild, but I think too Campbell's value isn't where a top prospect necessarily would be, just because he's done this for half a season. This might be a hot take. I'd be more willing to trade Miguel Blaze if it's a blockbuster trade. One, because I think if you trade Blaze, he brings more value to another team in terms of a trade than Christian Campbell does, which means you don't have to trade as many other pieces in a trade. So there's also that side of the things. And then also, too, Christian Campbell can play second base, third base, outfield. I'm sure he could play a little bit of shortstop in a pinch. So he has versatility. Not that Miguel Blaze can't play. Miguel Blaze can for sure play the outfield. I mean, the guy was just made a number 2, play on the SportsCenter top 10 the other night, right? He can play the outfield, no issues. But in terms of you start looking long term, I mean, the Red Sox can find a spot for Miguel Blaze, obviously, if he's good enough. But with Christian Campbell, it's a little bit easier to fit him into the puzzle because of the versatility, right? So I think just in that sense. And also, like I said, too, I think because Blaze's value is probably higher, you could probably trade less value in the rest of the trade. So, like, for example, if Blaze's value is, 75% of the trade, but Campbell's is only 50%, now you have to fill the other 50%, whereas if you trade Blaze, you only get to fill 25%. That's just, like, hypothetical, but, like, that's more so what I mean, too, in that sense. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So. And also, too, Miguel Blaze, as much as I love him, it is a risk trading him away because he's only in high A. But at the same time, he very well could get to double A, struggle, and then, you don't know what's going to happen. With Christian Campbell, I know he hasn't been in double A long, but he's tearing the cover off the baseball in double A, which gives me more assurance that, because in terms of jumps in the minor leagues, the big jump is high A to double A, right? And if you figure that out, you're pretty good for the most part. Obviously, you still got to prove stuff at AAA and then the big leagues, and then AAA to the big leagues is the real jump, right? But in terms of minor leagues, that high A to double A jump is probably the most important. And Campbell's doing very good at that jump. So that's why, to me, I don't think his value is as high as it's going to be. So I think if you're trading him, you're not trading him at peak value. Miguel Blaiscat might not be at peak value for him either, but I think in terms of right now, he's closer to what his peak value is than what Christian Campbell is to what his peak value is going to be.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I do wonder what the scouts around the league feel about Christian Campbell. I mean, we saw the reasoning. He hasn't gotten necessarily the kind of hype that somebody of his production at his level, at his age, is getting, and it's a lot of stuff to do with they believe that he can't catch up to high velocity. They think he's cheating for pitches, and because he's cheating, he's susceptible to good breaking stuff. So there's reasoning behind him not getting that top 100 hype. I think he's definitely comfortably in the top 150.
Yeah.
But he's not. He hasn't been given the credit as a top 100 player. I mean, he finishes the year. I mean, nobody's going to sustain the kind of production he's sustaining. He's going to cool off at some point.
Yeah.
He's got like a 250 WRC plus in AA right now,
Yeah.
so he's going to cool off a little bit. But
Yeah.
if he sustains his production to a degree, we get to the off season, he may be your number 4 prospect, right behind the big 3, and it's really a big 4, and then you can trade
Big
you
5
can trade him at that point.
Place.
Yeah, big 5 and maybe even big 6 with Cespedes, because he's been getting a lot of the hype as well. So, maybe trading those guys is more of an off-season thing, but I think if Vlad's legitimately on the table, you got to at least dangle him out there and see what the response is from a team like Toronto, and be like, oh, you really like Christian Campbell? Give us Vladdy.
Yeah, that's the only type of trade you dangle those guys out in. Like you're not just going to trade Miguel Blaze or Christian Campbell just for the sake of trading them, basically.
Yeah, like if Tarek Skubal's available, you're like, all right, who from our big 3 do you want? And just to see what they say. They probably would say all 3 of them, but but it's like, all right, would you trade, like, of the big 3, who do you like the most, and basically see who that is. You're doing something similar with Vladdy. You'd be like, all right,
I'll
what do
eat
you
that
think of
Javi
Christian
Baez
Campbell?
contract to get Tariq Skubal.
I would eat many a things for Tariq Skubal.
I spoke about this on the show, but I don't think I spoke about this on Pest Report. But I have a $5 bet on Tariq Skubal to win $250 if he leads the MLB in strikeouts. So, like, I just need him to keep going and, like, just continue striking people out. I know there's people ahead of him in terms of the strikeout lead, but, like, one of them is Tyler Glasnow. Can Tyler Glasnow stay healthy? I don't know. I don't know if I could bank on Tyler Glasnow staying healthy. Like Garrett Crochet, like his arm could fall off any minute, And then it's like Dylan Cease, Cole Reagans, and Freddie Peralta. He's tied with Freddie Peralta. So he's got a decent shot at it. I'm hoping it hits because I could use $250. I'm not going to lie. I think we all could.
Yeah. Living ain't cheap.
I mean, hey, $5 bet to win $250 on Skubal. I saw those odds and I'm like, yes, please. Like Strider was like plus 190, plus 200, something like that. And Skubal was like plus like whatever. Like I said, $5 bet to win $250. Like, I'm not turning that down. I couldn't turn that down, so I'll just do that. But yeah, I think that's actually it's probably a good jumping off point. Obviously, it's been a long episode, just over an hour. Typically, we'd like to stick to 45 minutes, but at the same time, we definitely wanted to get the deadline conversation in. Jordan, we thank you for joining us. If you want to shout out your Twitter again.
Yeah, Jordan Leandre, Lean as in Nancy, DRE 55. That's I almost gave my email address. That's my Twitter. And then obviously Pesky Report as well, at Pesky Report.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, for Jason, who's been stuck on mute because he is in a hotel, so it sucks to suck for him, I guess. We'll have a little bit more Jason next episode. So for Jason,
welcome back.
Yeah, for Jason, Jordan, thanks for joining us. My name is Derek. Thanks for tuning into the Fenway Focus, and we will see you next time.